war. War never changes.
Hey guys, and welcome to my review for Season 2, Episode 6 of Fallout on Amazon, The Other Player. Well, things are really coming together now as we head to the end of the season. This was a pretty good episode that gave us a lot of new story points and confirmed some important information that many of us suspected for a while now. So let's get into the positives, starting with the pre-war and pre-corporate meeting opening scene of a deeply troubled and conflicted Barbara Howard attending a number of Vault-Tec meetings. It was pretty funny watching the employees casually discuss how many nuclear bombs would look good on their advertisements, all the while eating their lunch, completely detached from the reality of what they're doing. It was also quite fascinating to learn that Vault-Tec knew that about 30% of their water chips would fail, and so would choose which vaults got the faulty systems. Now, Vault 33's water chip seemed to be damaged because of the Raider attack, but I wonder why they chose to put a faulty one in Vault 13, which was the vault from the very first Fallout game, which resulted in the Vault Dweller embarking on his legendary adventure to find a replacement. The other meetings included a discussion about Vault-Tec getting a 30-minute warning before the nukes landed, though we know from the games those warning systems usually didn't work very well, and saw Robert House's body double present the mind control device they would be trading for cold fusion, which Barbara knew nothing about as apparently it was above her pay grade. Then we got a pretty sad scene with the ghoul still impaled on that pole, asking for help from indifferent Freeside residents who wouldn't even look his way. Even Dogmeat couldn't help him, and he slowly started turning feral because he couldn't reach his medicine. During yet another pre-war scene, this time set during their Las Vegas visit, Cooper finally confronted his wife, revealing he knows about the corporate meeting and plan to drop the nukes, really letting his emotions loose by calling her a monster who was willing to kill millions of innocent people, supposedly for the sake of their daughter. Barbara tries to explain this is an inevitable conclusion being orchestrated by much larger powers that will happen regardless of her involvement, so she has to play her part to ensure the safety of their family. Going forward 200 years, we have Maximus and Thaddeus successfully escaping the Brotherhood and abandoning the power armor to avoid being tracked. They then discuss what to do with the cold fusion they've stolen, as Thaddeus wants to sell it so they could be rich and finally live comfortable lives, whereas Maximus wants to give it to a good person, like the Vault Dweller Lucy, who will put it to good use. But Thaddeus is skeptical that there are any good people, making the interesting point that it's easy to be a good person when you don't have to worry about food, clean water, or safety. Which reminded me of a quote from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, when Benjamin Sisko said, "It's easy to be a saint in paradise." Going down to Vault 33, we see that the Children of Inbreeding Support Group / Snack Club is more popular than ever, even turning away prospective members who aren't sufficiently inbred. And here we got to hear another of my favorite songs from the games during the Uranium Fever dance sequence that took place in their leader Reg's imagination. All before Overseer Betty finally put her foot down and brought guards to shut down the club and end this waste of resources during their water crisis, saying you don't get extra rations just because of who your parents were. But Reg actually stands up to her, claiming that in America you absolutely get better treatment depending on who your parents were, which is the whole reason they grew up in a vault instead of the wasteland, because their ancestors put themselves first and secured their own lives during the Great War. I'm really curious how far Betty is willing to go to shut this down, and if she'll go full crackdown mode and send the guards to enforce her rules through violence. And if she does that, will the opposition fight back, leading to a civil war that destroys the vault like we've seen many times before, like in Vaults 11, 13, 101, 111, and of course Vault 32, where the residents revolted after learning the truth about their management experiment. Over in Vault 32, Chet got the disturbing news that Woody went missing after his discussion with Steph, and shockingly learns that his wedding has been announced for the next day, entirely without his knowledge or consent. And the last positive I want to mention is the end credits, where we start in Bud Askin's office, which is full of Fallout toys like Giddy Up Buttercup and Grognak the Barbarian comics, as well as a poster for the Cooper Howard movie A Man and His Dog, which was inspired by the real-life movie A Boy and His Dog, which in turn was the inspiration for the original Fallout game. Then as we leave his office, we see a number of research facilities, including one that reads FEV cultivation, which brings to mind Vault 87, where they experimented with FEV and created the super mutants and centaurs. Moving on to the negatives of the episode, I don't really have any. This wasn't my favorite episode of the season or anything, but I can't really say I objected to anything specifically. So we'll go right to my top 5 moments, starting with the first real appearance of super mutants, as one of them, awesomely played by Ron Perlman, who's been a voice actor for every Fallout game so far, saves the ghoul and takes him back to a creepy looking lair, very reminiscent of the games with gore bags hanging everywhere, and puts a uranium rock in his wound to help the healing process, which brings to mind the glowing ghouls from the games, which glow bright green and heal other ghouls near them while harming humans. He then offers the ghoul a chance to join the mutant revolution against the enemy who robbed them of their humanity. And here we finally get the name drop I've been waiting for since those early episodes in Season 1, as the super mutant rightfully blames the Enclave for their mutations. But the ghoul still has no interest in having allies and wants to work all on his own, so the super mutant knocks him out and takes him somewhere else so he won't know the location of this hideout. Dogmeat then runs into Thaddeus and Maximus, leading them to the still injured ghoul recovering nearby. At the number 4 spot, I chose the pre-war, pre-corporate meeting flashback scene when Barbara Howard decides to look into cold fusion, and is suddenly confronted in the elevator by Dr. Siggy Wilzig from Season 1, who delivers a message from the nameless higher-ups, who we know is very likely the Enclave, threatening the lives of her and her family unless she continues to do as they say, instructing her to tell the corporate leaders at the upcoming meeting that they can guarantee results by dropping the bombs themselves, confirming that Barbara Howard really doesn't have any say in what's going on, and is simply a pawn of higher powers that she can't even identify, as she apparently isn't even aware the Enclave exists. For the third best moment, we move to the Las Vegas flashback scene, where, after learning what Barbara knows, Cooper Howard is unable to sit around doing nothing, and so continues with his plan to steal cold fusion by kidnapping a drunk Hank McClane and giving him a sedative so he can get into the case attached to the man's wrist. But to Cooper's surprise, all he finds is an extractor gun, after which Barbara arrives and extracts cold fusion from the back of Hank's head, the same place Dr. Wilzig put it 200 years later when he escaped from the Enclave. And as the scene ends, she's in possession of cold fusion, which leaves me wondering if she'll give it to Cooper, keep it for Vault-Tec, or if they make some kind of plan to prevent the sale to House while preserving Barbara's job and the safety of their family. At the number 2 spot, I chose Lucy waking up in the underground Vault-Tec building where she found an office full of mind-controlled workers happily producing more mind-control devices for Hank. Among the many people Hank has taken from the wasteland, there are legionaries, tribal warriors, murderers, cannibal cooks, and more. Lucy is prepared to fight her way out, but is entirely confused when she finds no resistance whatsoever. Even her father Hank doesn't resist when she threatens him at knife point, saying she'll take him to Vault 33 to stand trial for the destruction of Shady Sands. Hank even handcuffs himself, all the while trying to make the case that he's saving these wastelanders from their own violent impulses. I enjoyed their brief discussion about All Quiet on the Western Front, as Hank tries to make the point that people in the wasteland wage war over the pettiest of reasons, and that he's trying to stop it and create a new, peaceful world. Which then brings me to what I thought was the best moment of the episode, when Lucy won't allow the activation of the mind control chip on the soldiers, and so Hank orders them to be let loose without alteration, causing the legionary to immediately attack the old NCR soldier Lucy remembers helped her recover from her injuries. Lucy tries to help the old man, but she's no match for the Legion soldier, and so is left with no choice but to activate the mind control chip, which immediately ends the violence at the expense of their personal liberty. Now guilty of the same thing her father was doing, Lucy has to wonder whether a peaceful world that forcefully limits personal freedom is better than a violent world where freedom reigns. This was a really great scene from beginning to end. I love how Lucy thought she was doing good by telling the workers they could leave, only for them to steadfastly refuse, as none of them want to face the dangers and violence of the wasteland now that their violent tendencies have been suppressed. I'm really curious how Lucy's going to contend with this and whether she may actually start to see things from her father's perspective. Now there's no best kill of the night since surprisingly no one died, so I went with the best fight scene, which was the Legion soldier attacking the NCR soldier by bashing a stapler into his head. And for the best line, I went with Thaddeus arguing to sell cold fusion by explaining that it's unlikely they will find a truly good person, saying, "Yeah, you know, I would be a good person too if I grew up on top of a mountain of food and supplies, in some cozy little impenetrable home. Wouldn't look like this, that's for sure. Wouldn't have to steal and stab and fib all the goddamn time just to get by. But if we sell it, guess what? then we'll be rich, and then we'll have the means to be one of those good people you're talking about. Cause I've seen a lot of things, you know, like crazy things, but good people, no. So like I said earlier, this was a good episode for sure, but for me, even though the story is advancing quite a bit, I'm usually more interested in the episodes that feature Mr. House and the Legion. So I can't say I enjoyed this one as much as the last episode or episode 3, but I'll still give this one a solid 8 out of 10. We're almost at the end of the season now, so it's gonna be interesting to see how much lore, history, and story they can cram into these last 2 episodes. And that's it for my review of Fallout Season 2 Episode 6, The Other Player. How did you guys like this one? What did you think of the super mutant and mention of the Enclave? What do you think Lucy will do with her father? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to check out my other Fallout videos like A History of Caesar's Legion, A History of the New California Republic, my Season 1 recap and prelude to Season 2, all of which will be linked in the comments below. I'll also be continuing these weekly reviews until the end of the season, so for now, thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Sir Elendil of Numenor, Sir Loin, Werebear of the Great North, Sir Willem the Dawn Treader, and Average Soul the Healer. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and click on the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.